So, I sort of wanted to talk about this, mostly because I was distracted by other things and my mind is ADHD. So, I ended up getting distracted from my distraction with another distraction. It happens, right? So, I was thinking about like Russia for some reason, and I forget actually what that reason was. Um, as weird as that sounds. Oh, right. Yeah, so my first initial distraction was as a result of going, well, what's the time difference between me and Germany? Right? And then that eventually went to United Kingdom. And that was like, oh, Germany's 9 hours. United Kingdom is currently 8 hours because I'm at a +7, right? Or, I mean, I'm at a -7 or something like that because I'm Mountain Standard Time, right? However, I was like, oh, well, that's pretty darn interesting, right? Like, what's 12 hours ahead of me? And it turns out it's Cambodia and like Laos, and then I kept going up further north because like it's just the Indian Ocean there, so like there's not much. But at the other on the other side of that, it's like I hit onto Russia, and then there's the Saskal some like that. I have to. All right, I'm gonna try and pronounce this. It's Saskila like ski. Anyway, yeah. So obviously not very good at it, but it's like Sas Kila Ka or something like that, or K, because it's Saskylakh. But they're supposed to be about 12 hours in front of me. And I was thinking about it as a weird thing, and I got all existential because it's like it's ahead. So it's ahead of me, but it's also above the northernmost part of Alaska in America, which was a bit odd. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try and look at what the parallels and all this other stuff was. And then my mind went off to like something else as I got distracted to like how it is that we think about like people in another country, right? And we go, oh, they're all terrible. But like that's not really how that works, right? Like not all of them are going to be terrible. That's not how that really is. And so you're not going to get me on it because like I don't hate all of Russia. Just like as much as I hate a lot of people in America, I don't hate everybody in America, right? Like anywhere. That's basically what that is, right? So, as weird as that sounds, it's like there's going to be people that you hate everywhere. There's going to be people that you love everywhere. It really doesn't matter, And then I got all kind of weird and existential again about that. And then I went, like, when you think about it, what's the difference between us and our community? Like, what, like, honestly, what, because we say, like, animal this and all that, that's how my mind relates to this information. So we try to dehumanize others, right? And then I went, like, what's the difference? Because here's the thing, like, an alien intelligence in these stories, connects to our brains. It gives us this image. It shows us one thing or another, and it tries to relate and communicate, right? And you think about it, like the very first start of our communication is we effectively body language and grunted and moaned, and then pointed at one thing or another, and went like, right? And then that meant something. So, like, eventually we started, like, brain-wise storing that information as our thought process and how it is we relate information to ourselves and ultimately speaking, like how we think and conceptualize around all the things around us and about us and, philosophy, blah, 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 and eventually, grows. That's how communication really kind of tends to start. However, I was like, but that's essentially what an animal does. I mean, outside of the language part that we end up associating with our memories, like a fucking animal will do the same thing. You know what I mean? Like an alien over there, but it's like they're the same thing as us. We're going to do the same thing. We're trying to fucking relate information, right? I mean, the gold plate on that fucking Voyager or whatever it was is essentially the same thing, right? So it's like, okay. He's like, oh, I see what you're doing. You're trying to, and it's like, no, shut up. So it's like an animal themselves should be very similar in that aspect, right? Like, wouldn't that be a thing? Like, they would obviously be thinking something. It's like, clearly there's a different thought process, the brain and how it works and how well it works and so on. But still, it's like, if we were to try and talk to them, there'd be a picture or something and trying to relate it and communicate and whatnot. And depending on whether or not because as a result, and so we're different in that sense because of either the intelligence and or just how our brains work. But like we're wanting to reach out. That's a part of our human species, it seems more like than anything. But like, hey, relate this information, try and be able to relay that information well enough that it's received and understood and is able to be processed by something else. Very interesting as a thought process, right? But it's like, what if like describing an alien intelligent communication, we're really just like, there was a dolphin, right? Like there's a dolphin in deep sea and shit fell and they got some images from some magazine or whatever the fuck it was and then they eventually were like, okay, maybe that's a thing. And they eventually started piecing together long enough and it keeps stuck around. Now granted, it's not really telepathic stuff. You get the picture on that one. It's more other things, truthfully speaking, that I'm trying to get across because it's like it's a real weird how it is we conceptualize like what really tends to start breaking that down for us. You know what I mean? Like an animal, like a dog, like you have as a pet. And like they clearly understand things. We understand that they will do certain body language and barks to show that, hey, play and or anger and or so on. And we got better at knowing that, right? But it's like they clearly store things and like how they would think would obviously still have that language attached to it that they understand. Very obviously in there, right? And so, like, whenever you think about it, it's like, oh, well, just because someone's over there and they think that one thing or another. And the reason why the existential came up was because it's like, well, that's kind of what tends to happen with leadership and other people that have various power or deciding various versions of what philosophy or your opportunities or possible morals and ethics or laws or what's acceptable and what's viewed as possible to become accepted and more happens to happen. You know what I mean? And it's such an odd thing. It's like, like an alien trying to reach out to us and it's like, oh, well, of course it'll communicate. But it's like, yes. But wouldn't that just be another animal? Right? You know what I mean? Like if you don't have the same language, like how are you going to relate information? Like such an odd, weird, but of course that's the same thing that we do, even online. That's like memes, you know what I mean? People can communicate with emojis and memes these days. And a few like little letters. Such a cool little thought, but like at the same time, that means essentially the same thing if we connected brain-wise. And it's like, all right, so I'll give you some emotions, right? And I'll give you some of this and give you, like an alien communicating to you, right? Right, so it's like they'll give you this feeling, they'll give you that, picture or this thing that they know or whatever, right? So that way, ultimately speaking, you can understand and relate the information between them, yourselves and get what's being said, and it can all happen really quickly. And that's really cool. But at the same time, it's also like, that would be the same with any other animal on this planet. And the animals definitely do that with themselves when they're thinking that way. Same thing with various other ways of like however they're observing things. And we know for a fact that blind people still have an imagination. It's just different than the visual ones that a lot of other people have. Now, I have aphantasia, and I have different blacks and densities and stuff like that. That is a part of my imagination, right? And so, like, for most people, they don't see that at all. And so I'm like, I kind of get more of what, people that are blind have for imagination. I understand them more than I understand people that have, like, regular, normal imaginations. And I'm like, that must be such a weird thing for some people that happen to just exist with that level of imagination and just inability to really even communicate. You know what I mean? The whole point was, it's like, yeah, war and blah blah and power and so on, and we hate you or we love you or this blah and that blah, you're wrong and I don't, and I'm right and you're wrong, and blah blah blah. It's all the same. It's the same stupid thing that's said over and over and over, over and over and over and over and over and over, day in, day out. And I just don't really care. The reason why I was thinking about it is like, what would be, like, I know there are a lot of places I would love to go visit and tour, right? that, like, generally speaking, I could never do because it's just, you know, very dangerous and not acceptable to try and go and you know, be doing things like that, right? But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but if that wasn't going on, you know, all this stuff, you'd probably visit a lot of places. They're beautiful places out there. Like, I mean, sure, it's pretty far north in Russia, but at the same time, it's like, I'm sure there's a lot of fun little things that you could do if you were able to figure it out. You know, like, it'd be really pretty interesting. Get like maybe an overlanding vehicle and off-road like crazy, right? That'd be very fun, you know? Or like, you know, see what the local culture's like, what they like to do, that kind of thing, right? Like, that seems fun, right? Same thing for like food, right? You know, what's the music like? What do they do? You know, I'd like to know. So, I don't know. It's me though. But it's like, oh yeah, no, there's the war problem, and I don't like that guy, and there's a lot of other people I'm sure I wouldn't like in Russia, and just as much as I like a lot of people, and no way here in America. You know, there's a lot of people I don't like. I really kind of hate them a lot. You know, that's kind of what that is. But like, regardless, it wouldn't really matter because, hey, that's like everywhere. It doesn't really mean anything. And however much hate I might get, I never really give a shit. You know what I mean? I get equal. Well, let's put it this way. More often than not, when someone meets me in real life, they like me a lot. You know what I mean? But when somebody doesn't tend to like me, it's because, generally speaking, a lot of people are probably people that don't like those people too. It's not me. It's just sort of telling often for myself, because I'm usually generally a pretty nice guy, and, you know, try and, instead of like fitting in or anything, just be a genuine person. And that you know, might sometimes rub the wrong people the wrong way, but in general, like, I'm not really that kind of person, so I don't really ever care. You know what I mean? And it never really bothers me. It took a long time to get to that point, right? The rejection sensitivity dysphoria problem of, you know, ADHD folks, right? But it's like you get ostracized by your family, and then you end up understanding a whole bunch of other shit with that, and you go through the whole therapy and all the rest of it. It's like, it wouldn't matter what's said, I just don't give a shit. Like, you kind of like have it just not impact you anymore. You know what I mean? But like, it's just like an odd thought process. Like, what really makes us us? If we say it's the language, we say it's the intelligence, but it's like, I mean, it's not like it's not there. You know what I mean? On that side, that's the thing. Like, it's obvious that they're thinking. It's obvious that they're planning. It's obvious that they're having experiences. It's obvious that those emotions and more are tied in there. We just have a hard time either accepting or believing one thing or another could be that. Right? Like, we tend to turn them into an you know, an automatic machine that's just biological for various, you know, animal species and so on, right? But it's like, it's clear that they're storing information. It's clear that they're calculating. It's clear that they're observing. It's clear that they're using that to then predict and go move forward. Now, how well and how not well, and how much, you know, other emotions or whatever. But then it's like, man, what are we talking about? Like, different people at this point, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, right? So it seems odd when I think about it, because it's like, what makes us us? And it's like, well, that's pretty obvious, right? But like, saying that tends to make certain individuals that don't really seem to get that part usually fairly angry or annoyed or frustrated, because it's like, well, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, yeah, but you're already doing it. See, the thing is like, you're not very self-observant, right? Like, you're already doing the thing that makes you you, right? Like, it's a very odd concept for some of them, but it's like, you're already doing it. But it's like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I just told you. Observation, analysis, processing, emotion, storage, using the storage of that information and observation to then plan and think and relate and communicate and all the rest. I just told you. Everything I just said in this video is what makes us us, and everything else around us. You know, that's it. That's all we are. That's all of it really has been, to be fair. And like, the moment they start becoming more alive is the moment they start doing that. right? Alive in that very real sense. Now, granted, the problem is like observation becomes very weird, right? Like observation could be the very difference between an influential interactivity interference value in quantum land, and then it's just stored as like a change, right, that sticks with them, and whatever smaller shit that's there that's then doing something, then it means that, like, well, they have stored information and they're calculating. Like, how far and how small can you get? And, like, we're looking at small single atoms for transistors, but it's like science does tell us that it's not theoretically impossible to get to the point where we might start controlling some of those things. Now, how well or not well, I mean, it remains to be seen, and how well we start, like, figuring other things out, but still, it very much hints to this very odd part of reality that we go, because it's this small, it can't. Because it's that big, it can't. But it's like, there's nothing that really states that in a way that wouldn't ultimately, down the road, be something that could very well be fully disproven and not be the case. So, you know, at least for right now, we go, well, we're not very good at seeing when that's there. And I'm like, okay, sure, right? I mean, a little. I mean, we're pretty bad about it, you know, for what it's worth, because there's a philosophy of, like, I can prove I myself exist, but not others. I'm like, bitch, that shit slapped you, so obviously it's there, you fucktard. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck did you just say, you idiot? Slap. So, obviously it's there, right? But it's like, because it affected me because of these and all this other stuff, okay, and then next thing you know, it's gonna be another universe again, huh? Right? Like, how many, is it just a breakdown of the brain? Is it a breakdown of the processing? Is it a breakdown of, like, how ultimately the brain itself even is able to observe itself, or something else? Is it a different sense that it can pick up? Of course, we spent a long time with that one, then we eventually realized there are a lot of different humans that can sense things better than us. You know what I mean? We ended up going, oh, women can smell way better than some people. Some women can taste way better, you know what I mean? Some women can see actual different colors than we can. Right? Like, we ended up realizing we were wrong in a lot of other ways than we ever were right. Let alone, like, the amount of times we ended up going through history lessons, and then we went, oh, well, I was told this, though. Oh, no. No, actually, this is what it is, at least for the best evidence that we currently have. Yeah, oh, well, you know, there's also some interpretation, and there's this one that's somewhat contrary, and then there might have been this going on that made it so that way that they wrote it like that, but there's a whole bunch. And it's like the drama of, like, online suddenly exists in a bunch of book formats for people that were writing and shit. It's like, he said, she said, right? And I'm like, fuck. You guys don't understand, you're playing with shit. We need to understand what's going on here. Can you write your genuine stuff? Please, no. And then you end up realizing it's like, so, a picture, huh? Like, that's gonna work? some fucking feeling and sound and shit. Like, and that's gonna relate information to someone that doesn't even want to fucking hear it in the first place, right? You know, like, I don't know. Anyways, whatever.